So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for attending. I chose to speak about Parshat Lech Lecha because it is my Parsha. It is the Parsha of the week in which I was born. It is the Parsha of my Bar Mitzvah and my first Aliyah to the Torah. And in many ways it is what we call in Hebrew Parashat Chayai, my life story. My life story thus far is a story of migrations. Migrations in which the geographical shift from one place to another, from one country to another, from one continent to another, is but the external facade, the underlying thread of an inner journey of heart and mind alike. I constantly traveled and set camp in the very same direction in which our people moved historically in our collective exile, from east to west, from the land of Israel and the Levant, Tel Aviv, where I was born and where I spent the bulk of my formative years, to Europe and then finally to North America. The more I traveled further away from the land of Israel, the more I understood and learned what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be Adam Yisrael in the metaphysical and spiritual sense of the term. The more time I spent away from my native milieu, the more I understood that Judaism cannot be reduced solely to a civic and ethnic mode of identity. The more time I spent in Galut, the more I understood that Judaism is a promise for Geulah, Geulat Ha'am, Geulat HaNefesh. I learned that Judaism is much, much more than mere nationalism. I came to realize that Judaism is an ontology, an understanding of being, une compréhension d'être, as Emmanuel Levinas would have it. Geographically speaking, mine is a Lech Lecha by way of inversion. And the more time I spent away from Israel, from the secular northern suburb of Tel Aviv, where I grew up, the more I drew courage to learn Torah and to immerse myself in Torah as a way of life. The more remote I was from the constant gaze of my secular friends and family back home, the more I learned what being Jewish is really all about. Now, when most of us think about Lech Lecha, we intuitively think about the first Lech Lecha of the Torah that transformed Avram's life, the Lech Lecha el haaretz asher areka. But there is also, of course, the second Lech Lecha in the Torah, the Lech Lecha el Eretz HaMoriah and the Akedah, which follows in Parashat Vayera soon thereafter. In Bereshit Rabbah, the Midrash poses an open-ended question, which is, in my view, a distinctly modern question pertaining to the very essence of Jewish identity. The Midrash poses a question of which Lech Lecha is more elevated and superior and theologically refined, which Lech Lecha is more demanding and gruesome, which Lech Lecha really constitutes the culmination of the Jewish vocation. Is it the Lech Lecha el haaretz asher areka, or is it rather the Akedah and the Lech Lecha el Eretz HaMoriah? It says in Bereshit Rabbah Lametet, Shtei pa'amim ktiv Lech Lecha, ve'en anachnu yodim ezo chaviva, im hashniya, im harishona. Twice in the Torah it is written Lech Lecha, and we do not know which Lech Lecha is more pleasant and pleasing and favorable in the eyes of the Lord. To be sure, the first Lech Lecha is an affirmative spiritual journey. Rabbi Shneur Zalman Miladi, the Baal HaTanya, writes in a seminal Torah Or, Eretz milshon ratzon, namely elevate yourself to a universal will above the petty concerns of the temporal and the mundane. The first Lech Lecha, the Lech Lecha el haaretz asher areka, is the Lech Lecha of self-enhancement and self-actualization. It is a journey of self-discovery and becoming. This is an existential journey with lots of promising discoveries and future benefits along the way. As Rashi puts it, this is the Lech Lecha lehanaatcha uletovatcha, for your own good and for your own benefit. Sham e'aseh otcha legoy gadol, there I will make you a great nation. V'kan en eta zoche levanim, whereas here you have no prospects for continuity and self-transcendence. Ve'od she'odia tivcha ba'olam. Not only this, says the Almighty to Abraham according to Rashi, I will also make you world-renowned, a spiritual celebrity. How about that? Abraham is offered here world fame. How about immortality and universal recognition as an incentive to move to another country? Sforno strengthens Rashi's take that the first Lech Lecha is full of future benefits and spiritual dividends to be derived by Abram and his descendants. By expounding further, says Sforno, El haaretz asher ar'eka, to the land that I will show you, רוצה לומר, haaretz ba etra'e elecha b'mar'ot Elokim, the land in which I will reveal myself to you with divine vision. In other words, according to Sforno, in the land of Israel, Abraham is promised greater spiritual lucidity, 2020 spiritual vision, and a special rendezvous with the Shekhinah, the immanent divine presence. If the first Lech Lecha is indeed, as Rashi argues, replete with personal benefits for Abraham and his posterity, if it is indeed a Lech Lecha lehanatcha or letovatcha, for your own good and for your own benefit, then this Lech Lecha represents a proactive approach to Jewish identity. According to the view of this Lech Lecha, we set sail and participate in this Lech Lecha, this complicated endeavor of being a Jew, with all the challenges and exigencies and complications which it entails, because walking in the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu makes life greater than life. Because in the words of Kohelet, Ze Kol Ha'adam, because as we Jews say every evening and during the Mariv service, Ki Hem Chayenu Ve'orech Yameinu, and because the spiritual benefits to be derived therein are all pervasive and quite incalculable. The second Lech Lecha in the Torah has been seen by many of our sages as the very pinnacle of Judaic faith, no less than the first Lech Lecha in the Torah. This is, of course, the Lech Lecha of the Akedah, in which Abraham is willing to utterly relinquish all that is precious to him to the point of utter self-negation, culminating in the potential slaughtering of his only son, his sole prospect for intergenerational continuity. This is not necessarily the proactive Lech Lecha of the Baal Tshuva. Rather, this is the gruesome and numbing Lech Lecha of the Crusades and the countless martyrs of our people who died al Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name throughout history. Much of secular Israel, in my eyes, is much closer to this second Lech Lecha of the Akedah ethos. I grew up on this kind of Judaism, with all the pathologies and victim mentality which it entails. The Lech Lecha of the collective trauma of the Akedah, aka the Holocaust. The Lech Lecha of being on the brink of extinction. When my grandfather, Shlomo Sessler of blessed memory, heard on Israeli radio in 1967, as the Six-Day War broke out, that the Israeli Air Force had just launched a preemptive strike against the Egyptian army, my grandfather broke down in tears of relief. Because my grandfather really believed, like millions of Jews and non-Jews back then in 1967, in the weeks and months preceding the Six-Day War, that the Second Holocaust was imminent. In 1967, 24 years after my grandfather lost most of his family in Europe, my grandfather dreaded that the new family which he made for himself in the Promised Land was also in danger of being massacred, as Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser openly proclaimed on Egyptian radio that the goal of the next war would indeed be the liquidation of Israel. Many Israeli soldiers are taken to Yad Vashem during basic training. Needless to say, many of these soldiers are not taught much of the affirmative aspects of Judaism. Most of these soldiers, born and raised in the land of Israel, have never seen a page of Gemara or heard the term Baalei Tosafot ever in their lives. The message is clear. This is why we serve in the army. This is our top priority as secular Israeli Jews. This is what it means to be a modern Jew. We are here to survive against overwhelming odds. And this is what it means to be a good secular Zionist. This is the Lech Lecha upon which I was raised. The Lech Lecha in which fathers bind themselves on the altar of secular political sovereignty